What's up, YouTube fans? Today we're going to do a review of the figures that we got in 2020. So there's a couple of rules that we're going to use today. So first of all, it had to be something that I reviewed. So I did review a lot. It's actually more that I reviewed than what's pictured here. But this first category we're going to do is going to be G1 masterpiece and third-party figures. So what you see in front of you is pretty much everything we got in terms of G1 and third-party masterpiece figures in 2020. There were a whole bunch of repaints that came out this year from all different companies. So for example, X-Transbots put out numerous repaints, such as their version of Trailbreaker, their version of Hoist, their version of Scourge. Those are all not going to be counted here. They're not new figures in 2020. They've been either repainted or, have a different paint scheme or the Toon version. Same for Transform Element. There's the Nemesis Prime. Anything that was a repaint, we're not going to include here. So this is just new figures that were released in 2020. The only one here that is kind of questionable is Fraudo, but because I didn't get a chance to review him until 2020, we're going to include him here. The other one that's kind of on the border was Hound. Hound came out at the very end of 2019, but I only received it in 2020, so we did not get to evaluate it in 2019. So that's the rules here. We're going to include everything that was new, and we're going to take a look, and we're going to give you my top three, basically the three best in terms of meeting expectations, and then the three that were the most disappointing. So what I mean by that is, just didn't meet expectations or had issues or flaws or whatever it is. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this. So coming in at number 3 most disappointing figures for the year is the Fans Toys Iceman. So this figure followed the Fans Toys Goose, their previous aerial bot, and looks wise it looks really nice, but there were definitely some issues with this figure. So for one, there were a lot of people who received this figure broken in the box. The legs had broken off at the thigh, and the reason is for the packaging. They just didn't use the right packaging, or they just had it packed poorly, and that was an issue. Luckily mine isn't too bad, although you do see the legs are a little bit loose, but overall mine doesn't have that issue. Another big issue was the backpack. This backpack is kind of unwieldy. It's very large, and the issue with it is there's a metal bar that blocks the waist swivel. None of these don't have ab crunches, but they all have waist swivels. This one also has a waist swivel built in. Unfortunately, you can't use it because of this metal bar. And then you get a lot of kibble back here on the back. He does have a little bit of issues with the legs staying together, but the main issue here was the backpack and the lack of a waist swivel and the lack of articulation in general. He just had some subpar articulation. So our expectations were pretty high on this guy. I don't think he met our expectations, and so this is why this is the number 3 most disappointing figure of the year. Coming in at number 2 most disappointing figure for the year is the X-Transbots Gravestone, their version of Motomaster. Now looking at this, you wouldn't think, why is this second most disappointing? But there's a couple of issues. So number 1, the waist joint. Now I have it in the vehicle mode, so you can't see this, but the waist joint, when it bends, it actually it sort of over time loosens and breaks. Mine is pretty much loose and not doesn't lock in anymore, and that actually ends up being the waist joint for the combined mode. At least it looks like it is. So that's going to be a little bit disappointing. We'll see how that turns out. But the other thing with this is there's a lot of collision during the transformation inside here, and anyone that's transformed this knows what I'm talking about. You have to kind of push the plastic in order to make it transform. That doesn't bode well long term. It feels like it is eventually going to break in there, but they just didn't have the clearances right on there. And then of course the biggest kind of disappointment is the fact that we didn't get the trailer with this guy. We found that out this year, that we weren't getting the trailer. They're redesigning the trailer, and that kind of set them back. So they said, okay, we're going to give you just the cab, we'll give you the trailer later. Most recently, we found out that that trailer is now going to be $230 just due to the redesign cost and the fact that it's all included in the trailer. That's a pretty big disappointment because we already paid $150 for this. I think it was $150 plus $230. That makes it, almost $400 to get this figure with the trailer, which is pretty wild, when you think about just one figure being that much. I guess you think about, MP44 was around their cost, so maybe that's your justification, but definitely does not pan out in terms of the value you're getting. It does not feel like 150, and then when you add up the trailer, for 400, it does not feel like $400 worth. I don't know how good that trailer is going to be. Hopefully the combined mode is really good, but that's why this is my number 2 most disappointing, because we didn't get the trailer and we have some issues with this figure, and then we found out about being charged for the trailer and then the accessories separately. So this will be my number 2 most disappointing for the year. And coming in at number 1 most disappointing for the year is the Takara Tomy Hound. Now looking at this again, it looks really, really good. It's beautiful in this vehicle mode. I love this Jeep mode, but everybody knows there's issues with this figure. So there are a lot of different panels that break on this. So right here, a lot of breakages has happened there. On this rear panel right here, when you open this up for transformation, people have been breaking that. There are some places that crack, especially around his neck. The panel that holds his neck in place does crack. The plastic they used was somewhat of a brittle plastic, and then the paint they used is also somewhat easy to scuff off when compared to more modern figures like the other 2 we just looked at. So because of that, you've got paint issues, you've got plastic cracking issues, you've got basically how long is this going to last type of thing. This is my second one. I had 2 of these. My first one started to crack. It didn't break, but it started to crack. So I sold that one, got another one, and this one is in good condition because I haven't transformed it. I'll probably leave it in this vehicle mode. If I do transform it, I'm going to be very, very careful with it, very gentle. But that was a disappointment. It looks so good in both modes, vehicle mode and robot mode. Has so many nice accessories, but yet it is extremely fragile. Some people say, it's made of cardboard or plastic, cheap plastic. It was very deflating. So that's why this is my number 1 most disappointing for the year. I still like him. It's just, I wish he was more robust. They are coming out with a KO for this guy. Unfortunately, the KO so far hasn't proven to be any better. In fact, it may be worse in terms of its quality. But this guy still stands at my number 1 most disappointing. Coming in at the number 3 best figure for the year is the MMC Probus, their version of a Masterpiece Brawl. So this thing, I wasn't expecting too much. I mean, honestly, it looked kind of funny in the pictures, but when I got it in hand and I compared it to the original cartoon, I was like blown away. How close it looks in terms of the vehicle mode and the robot mode. There are so many features on this thing. You got these cannons back here, you got the turret here, this moves. I mean, there's lots and lots of detail kind of everywhere, and it just looks great in the tank mode. And then you get it to robot mode, and it looks great in robot mode too. You can check out my review to see a little bit more, but the robot mode, not only does it look good, it has a lot of articulation for a big bulky guy like this. And that was really impressive that they were able to get all of that articulation for such a bulky big guy. And at first I thought, this is kind of weird looking. It's kind of, is this really the cartoon? But sure enough, I went and compared, and this thing nails that cartoon look. And it's a really nice figure. So that's why this is my number 3 best figure for the year. Coming in at number 2 best figure for the year is Fans Toys Magnum, their version of Wild Rider. So we've kind of forgotten about this figure. It's been, out for a while, and there are other competing figures. We've got the X-Transbots version as well as the DX9 version. But out of all 3, this one absolutely destroys them. The reason is it is such a beautiful figure to look at. The paint is just outstanding. You've got this metallic red, you've got this gray. I mean, it looks good from all angles. The articulation on this, unlike some of the more recent Fans Toys figures, this thing has full knee articulation, full elbow articulation, double jointed, all the fully articulated hands, waist swivel all the way around. No waist, no ab crunch, but everything else you would want in a figure. This has it all. So I was really impressed. They were able to basically put all of that into one figure, and then the car mode is absolutely beautiful. That's something I love. Transformers is really beautiful car modes, and this has it for sure. So that's why I give this number 2 figure for the year. I really think they did a good job. Not all of them, but this one in particular I think is really, really well done. And coming in at number 1 best figure for the year is Fans Toys Thomas. I don't think anybody who watches my channel finds this to be a surprise. This figure is just outstanding. It nails all 3 modes. It looks great as a train, it looks great as a shuttle, it looks great as a robot. It's solid, it's got die cast, it's got paint everywhere, got the translucent pieces. I mean, it just looks great. The only real complaint I had is, okay, it's a little bit kibbly back here on the legs, but that's literally my only issue with this entire figure. Normally Fans Toys figures are a huge pain to transform. This one's actually not bad at all. I've had a pretty easy time transforming between the 3 modes. And one thing that this does well, which hasn't been done to date, is all 3 of the modes in the triple changer are good. Very rare. We've had other triple changers to date. We've had Unique Toys has made some triple changers. Even Fans Toys has made Springer, a triple changer. But there's always one mode that suffers. It's always either a vehicle mode. Usually the robot modes are pretty good, but it's usually one of the vehicle modes that suffers. In this case, they nailed all 3 modes, and that's just a feat of engineering to do that. So that's why this is my number 1 figure for the year. I also asked my fans in a poll on my channel, and I'll put up the image there, of what was your favorite third-party company for the year, and the majority, I think it was 60% or above 60%, said Fans Toys. There were a lot of people who answered a different company, not one that I had listed here. So those were other companies like New Age or Perfect Effect. They didn't produce a lot this year, honestly. There were other companies, but unfortunately Fans Toys produce way more than any of those other figures, and I think that's one reason why you guys chose them as the number 1 third-party company for 2020. And honorable mention for best figure of the year goes to the Fans Toys Dune Runner. This is their version of Beachcomber. I didn't put it in my top because there is some limited articulation on this guy, but absolutely stunning in both modes, just really cool. It is a mini bot, so there is some places where there's limited articulation, but overall just an absolutely cool figure. There were mixed reviews on this panel here. You can have it without the panel, but without that there is a lot of blue, so there isn't a lot of like color breakup and little details like they did have on Arcos. But overall, this is a way better figure than Arcos. So honorable mention goes to the Fans Toys Dune Runner. So now we're going to get into the non-G1 third party and masterpiece. In fact, we're going to go through some figures that I don't even have. So I'll put images up on the screen of from my review so you can see the figures that I'm talking about, and we'll talk through them. We didn't have that many, so I'm probably only going to pick 1 or 2 from that list to show you as the best and worst. So we'll put up on the screen all the different figures, and then we'll go through that. And coming in at the number 1 most disappointing non-G1 masterpiece figure for the year is the movie masterpiece Ratchet. So this is a Target exclusive. It came out at Target, and I picked it up. It was $140, I believe, retail. And since then they've dropped the price significantly. They've had several clearances, but this figure just does not feel great. It looks okay, it looks like the movie, but unfortunately way too many problems, just too many loose panels and pieces. So that's why this is my number one most disappointing masterpiece for 2020. And coming in at the best non-G1 third-party figure that I looked at this year is the Iron Trans Starblade, their version of Star Saber. So we have gotten a Star Saber before from Takara Tomy, official version. This thing just blows that out of the water. It's not even close. It is very Gundam-esque. You know, it does take a little bit of liberty on the look, but overall, just an amazing figure. The amount of die cast and paint and detail and the look in robot mode and vehicle mode is just absolutely incredible. I'm excited to see what they do with the Leo Convoy. Hopefully Iron Trans doesn't disappear in the pandemic, but we'll see how it does. It'd be cool to see how this combines. But until then, this is going to be my top non-G1 third-party figure. We did get a whole bunch of those Takara Tomy Beast Wars figures, but unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to look at those, so those aren't even in contention here. Speaking of Tigatron and also of the Beast Wars Leo Convoy, we didn't get to look at those this year. That's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. I had a really good year. I had fun doing these videos. Hope you enjoyed this video as well. Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever you celebrate. And thanks for joining me. We'll have one more video like this. We'll be taking a look at the Hasbro mainline Earthrise stuff, and then we'll do a couple of other review videos. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.